Hello everybody. Today I have Olaf Hermans from Breda University of Applied Sciences. Now, I've been communicating quite a bit with Olaf and did a little presentation for him on customer experience. And Olaf has some very interesting and different views on customer experience and Net Promoter. His focus is on metrics, intelligence, and algorithms, AI, that drive goodwill, loyalty, and value in relationships. And his focus, I believe, is more on how, as we can see there, loyalty today is it's about being invested in, I guess, if I can say that, and not the bonus of a great experience, which I think is a really different angle to the customer experience world, because so often we hear talk about emotions, about emotional engagement, and creating and building and designing great experiences that buzz and wow. And I think Olaf has a different opinion on that. So, Olaf, it's great to have you. I think just maybe we'll kick off with just give a little bit of intro to yourself, and then let's talk a little bit about how you see the customer experience and particular things like loyalty and NPS are today, what state they're in, before getting into a little bit of your ideas. So if you just kick off with who you are, and then we'll get into customer experience, please.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you for having me, Stephen, and thank you for the many good conversations we already had in the past. So my name is Olaf. I'm 49 years old. I'm born Dutch. I live in Belgium. I have my doctoral education from Pennsylvania State University. I'm currently employed by the NHTV University in Breda, which is one of the largest theme universities in tourism, leisure, hospitality, and related topics. We have about 7,000 students specialized in those themes. My own field of expertise is in consumer behavior, but way more narrowly in loyalty. So what keeps people coming back, keeping them engaged and motivated to interact with you, not just to buy from you, but also to co-create with you. And I basically base my fundamental research activities, meaning innovating in matrix. So we try to develop new matrix that show good predictive power towards desirable consumer behaviors. I base that research mostly in the US, and here in the Netherlands, in Breda at NHTV University, I mostly do applied work with large companies like Shell and Unilever. So that's about it.
Okay. And in terms of what you have found, what's the standout finding that you have around loyalty and customer experience from your academic work?
Yeah, I think there's two important dimensions that I would like to work along when discussing the topic of customer experience and customer loyalty. And the first one is not so much cognition versus emotion. So basically the debate about whether it's emotions or cognition is interesting, but we just all know that both are equally important. Cognition drives emotions. People wonder why they have particular emotions. So these go back and forth. When we talk about a concept like closeness, for instance, like are we close? Well, that means like I am special to you and I think I'm special to you, so that has a cognitive dimension. It means also feeling close, and it also means like spending a lot of time together, so that's a behavioral dimension. So basically when we talk about relationships and loyalty, we're talking about something that is being constructed, a social construct, and there all three dimensions, behavior, cognition, and emotions, play out at the right moment. So basically that's not the issue, but where I think the managerial practitioners, but also the academic community, have gone wrong is actually in over abstracting relationships and loyalty, and thereby excellence like Net Promoter Score, and we talk about ambassadors. We want ambassadors. And when you say, Stephen, that I have like special ideas, I really hope that these are the ideas of the customer, not so much my ideas. But I think that the customer has really very mundane, and I call it grounded, very down-to-earth ideas about what loyalty means. And the nicest thing that I always come up with is that your neighbor doesn't want you to be his ambassador. He just wants you to mow his lawn when he's ill.
Mm-hmm.
It means that loyalty is that invested behavior, is doing something for someone else from which a priori you don't derive any, let's say, benefits, or you don't have expectations from it. You just do it for altruistic reasons.
Okay.
So loyalty means doing something for someone else for the purpose of making that other person, or in our case, a company. So customers do stuff because they like us and they want to return something to a company. And then they start to engage in all kinds of practical stuff, like making referrals or becoming a good citizen of your organization, participate, engage, and so on with your staff, and give feedback and coach your employees, and start developing products with you, and so on. So basically, loyalty is an activity. It's a process. It's just like customers being active. And then when you ask them, like, are you an ambassador? They're actually kind of flabbergasted and say, like, what do you mean? What do you mean? So it means that we have let's say, as managers and practitioners, we have started to think in terms of very high concepts like trust and effective commitment and bonds. We want a bond with the customer, but the customer doesn't really know what you're talking about. See, he just says, like, well, I do stuff for you, you do stuff for me, and let's try and identify and recognize each other, and I would like to recognize myself in what you're doing, and so on. So actually what my key contribution is that I've made all loyalty and relational concepts like way more grounded, like way more natural, and like just keep doing normal.
Yeah. So that's more about the behavior then of loyalty. What do you think about Net Promoter then? Because I think a lot of practitioners would say, well, we have NPS, we're shooting for high NPS, get our advocates and our promoters up, and therefore loyalty will accrue from that. What's your view on that?
Yeah, so what I say is that companies do something right, like they hopefully create this nice experience, like it's a very grounded thing, like a service touch point or encounter. Then they hope that something kicks really high into the mind of a customer, like, I want to be an ambassador and I'm going to recommend this. Like that is like suddenly like a high cognitive abstract conclusion from a mundane happening, like a service event. And then we expect again that once the customer feels like I'm an ambassador and I'm going to recommend, that they actually going to engage in all kinds of co-creative and loyal behaviors. And that curve is actually not taking place in the minds of customers. So customers are not going up into Net Promoter Score and then evaluate it at the highest level of abstraction and then engage in behaviors. They just like stay grounded. And so what I mean by that is that the only consequence of Net Promoter, there's nothing wrong with ambassadors, and there's nothing wrong with people willing to recommend services to their network. But what we have seen is that it's the only consequence of that is that customers do not exclude that they will continue to do business with you, which is really important. So it is good to have ambassadors because these people expect that in a few years they will still hang around your company. But they're not specific about how they're going to make that, like how they're going to materialize their loyalty. So how that is going to shape up, like are they going to co-produce, co-create, refer? Some people have networks, other people have no network, so you can be an ambassador without a network. Well, then you cannot recommend people. So see, so it's a Net Promoter Score on an individual customer level is not consequential, and that has been proven, so that we have the scientific proof. Now, how is it then that we pay so much attention to Net Promoter Score? Well, it's actually a strategic metric. It has been proven that companies that across their database report high Net Promoter Score indeed are more profitable as a company. And so it means that it is a metric that belongs in a dashboard like or a balanced scorecard. So it is something that CEOs love to see because it gives them some confidence. It links with market share and these kind of things. But it means that it is like a boardroom statistic. It's not a service center statistic.
Yes.
And that's basically like where we went wrong. We tried to kind of hope that a strategic metric would also let's say, be helpful in guiding the next interactions and experiences that we need to create. And honestly, we all know that when at some point in a company the Net Promoter Score goes down, it's very different for marketing, sales, and service people to say like, what have we been doing wrong, and where should we adapt with the customers that now report a little lower Net Promoter Score. So it's really changes in Net Promoter Score always lead to a big question mark, like, yeah, what should we do? And it's basically not really actionable.
Okay, so what's your vision of making things more actionable to build, I suppose, that more complex dynamic of relationships that build loyalty? I think getting more down to the nitty-gritty of how you interface with customers. What would you actually do?
Yeah, well, I think the first step that we need to make is that the unit of optimization or the unit of analysis is the encounter. And so for me, the word encounter is absolutely critical. That means that I'm never talking about a touch point. Touch point is something that is used by people who design customer journeys. Like we have a touch point and we need to kind of offer something. An encounter is almost like a mini project environment. Suppose a check-in in a hotel, for instance, you have about 1 minute and 32 seconds. And staff is instructed to do 13 things, and they give you like they need to ask for your credit card, they give you a key, and so on. There's a number of things that need to be done. They check your reservation, and so on and so on, and then they allocate a room and whatever. So there's a few things that happens in about 92 seconds. Well, that means that there is an encounter. Now, what is now so new in that is that encounter, a lot of stuff is brought to that encounter. It's a mini project that takes 92 seconds. You have your knowledge, you have your resources as a company, you have your rooms, you have your staff. The staff member can be knowledgeable, not knowledgeable, can be a trainee, can be someone who is mature. So you bring competencies into the encounter. But more importantly, the customer also brings competencies into the encounter. It can be a loyal customer, it can be a new customer, a first-timer, it can be someone with a complaint last time, so it can be someone who is like grumpy and not willing to do anything, or it can be someone who is willing to perform self-service and do a self-service check-in and so on. So it means that there's a lot of factors that we actually can hardly design for before the encounter starts. So what I think is that an encounter is, what happens in an encounter is almost like a black box. It means that we can prepare for it by telling the employees or who the customer is that they will meet, and we can tell the customer who the employee is that they will meet. So basically like with a calendar, you know, like today we had an appointment and we know that at this time of the day you and I are going to meet. But you and I had no clue before this how these 20 minutes would turn out and where we're going to take this. And that's exactly what I mean by an encounter. So it cannot be designed for. We can only bring some stuff, ingredients, resources up for grab, and then we have to integrate it. So that's the idea of resource integration, and then we try to make the most value out of it at both ends of the spectrum.
Okay.
Now what I say is that in that encounter, and that is like fundamental, that three generic needs are being fulfilled. That is you doing something for me. That is a functional need. Indeed, I need to get my key. I need to get to my room. I pay for it and so on. So that's basically the traditional one that we all are aware of, that the customer has needs and wants. Albeit that we need to put here like serious limitation because people no longer know a priori what they expect. So it's very hard to say a priori like what do you expect? Well, I don't know. My expectations will shape as the encounter unfolds. I mean, like if I see that you are smart, then my expectations will go up. So my expectations a priori when you enter an hotel do not really exist. They are kind of minimal. But when I meet smart people in an encounter, then suddenly I think like, okay, I can step up my expectations, and if I make my own contribution, then we can actually make more out of it. But it means that I do have expectations from you, but they emerge as the encounter unfolds. So there's no such thing as doing market research before. Anymore. So it's, but then the second need is that there is a need to connect. So Baumeister, 1995, the need to belong. It's a seminal paper. Everybody must read that because it says that everybody needs a relationship. Now that sounds kind of not true because some people say like, look, you know, I don't want a relationship. You know, I don't want a relationship with my bank or with my garage or so. But basically, no relationship is also a relationship. So when you want to be left alone and not be contacted like every week or every 3 days with news or whatever information or content, and you can actually share that with a company and they leave you alone, then you actually have a great relationship because it's a relationship of being left alone and they being aware of the fact that you want to be left alone. And so that actually the principle of wanting to have a relationship is more important than people say like, I don't want a relationship. No, everybody wants a relationship. but we just sometimes want to have it and set it at like a very low level. Now, why is this important? Because relationships allow us to go into a lazy mode. And here we come to an important paradox or issue in the experience economy. And this one we have already discussed, the two of us, like before. It is impossible to stay involved and engaged all the time. So there is something about engagement that is fundamentally wrong. Man is not programmed to be engaged. As we say, engagement is the last stage before burnout. It means that engagement is a stage that when you talk about, for instance, picking a school for your children, you're only engaged before you choose the school, and then you want to know all the other parents, like, is this a good school, and so on. But once your kid is in the second year of that school, you don't attend the parent evenings anymore, and you think like, they're fine, they're doing fine, and I will be okay for the next 5 years. And then you attend only the last graduation party of your kid, and then you're fine. So we must allow customers to go into a low engagement mode, which does not mean that they're not loyal. So equating loyalty and engagement is one of the biggest mistakes we make in experiential thinking. So we need to allow people to go into like a very low cognitive and emotional mode, but more in what we call an affect mode. There's a difference between emotion and affect. Affect means that I have a deep affect for you. It's stable, but it's not, so I feel good about you, and it's stable, but I don't have like emotions that take me into some kind of roller coaster all the time.
Yes.
And therefore we see that in relationship sciences, once we have this more durable contact, cognition is always the stronger element, because we just know that the strength of our relationship is that I know what you're good at, you know what I'm good at, we know that what we're going to get out of this relationship together, and that's a highly cognitive activity, and then we go into a very low mode of engagement, because there's a lot of what I call efficiency and intimacy, meaning that if we don't communicate, but we exactly know what we want from one another, then we both are sure that things get done exactly the way that we want them to be done. So that's the second need. This is the need to actually have a relationship in order to achieve a point of efficiency and effectiveness that people who don't have a relationship can never achieve, because the people who don't have a relationship need to stay into deal seeking, looking for information, seeing it, because they are like solely responsible for optimizing their own experience. But I have no problem once I have a relationship with you to actually follow your recommendations and suggestions. And that's also what companies do with the customers they relate with. Then actually the customers become very acquiescent and lenient and forgiving, and they just go with everything you have to tell to them. But then we come to the third need in an encounter, and that is actually very modern, since about like 2 to 3 years, is actually that customers have an absolute need to make a contribution to the encounter. And this is like fundamental, that the service delivery model is over. So we're no longer like service is important, or experience is important, or products are important. The point is that anything that is being delivered to me for which I only have to pay will never ever make me loyal. The point is that whatever is good, I have had my contribution and participation in that. And what we see today is that companies that allow customers to work, that's the idea of the working customer, which was first initiated by I think by Kova in 2008, who's a French professor from Montpellier. So even after Lush and Vargo in 2004, like the service dominant logic, there it became clear that the customer retains value while using a service or a product, and that you have to stick with them all the way, because then there's the time that the customer may derive value, and you have to support them with the right content and so on. But the idea that the customer is actually working for the company, and that is loyalty, like the customer making the company go viral and be successful and so on. And then actually what we see is that the customer who works harder is more satisfied about you as an organization. And that's the big paradox. We have always believed in the exchange model, is that if I work hard for you, then you're satisfied. And what we now see, and it's like statistically, we see it over and over again, it's a robust finding in our research, is that when customers can make actually their own contribution, then they're more satisfied about you as an organization, which seems so paradoxical, but it's absolutely true. So there's 3 needs that need to be fulfilled. You need to work for me. We need to make our connection stronger, so that we kind of build up an asset for the future in every encounter. And it means that you need to allow me to work for you. Okay. And these are 3 needs, and it means that the encounter of the future has 3 layers. It means that in every touch point, we have 92 seconds for a check-in. You give me a key. You meanwhile ask me for how my kids are doing, and if we still share the same passions and future together. And you ask me like, can you do me a favor? When you check out, can you do it at another moment of the day? Because there will be a queue and you are a loyal customer and I would like to ask you a favor. And I will say like, I will be happy to do that for you. And then actually I'm more satisfied about you because I will have to do the service myself or actually to fit into your planning. So
Yes.
we need to dare to ask customers to do favors and actually then to find out that they're more satisfied about you because they feel like, hey, if I can pay you a favor, it literally means that there's more pleasure in giving than in taking. And it has been proven. It has been proven. People in life who give are happier people than the ones who are always seeking to take. And it's stupid. It's almost like philosophical and religious, but it is true. And we also see it in service encounters.
Cool.
So this is what I see
Yes.
as the future. Now, where is the artificial intelligence in this?
Exactly.
Is that all the operational systems need to have 3 layers, and they need to stay grounded in their feedback. So we don't need to ask people like, are you loyal, or do you feel that you have a bond with us, or whatever. So we don't need to take like this highly abstract feedback. We simply need to ask like, do you feel that you are important to our organization? Do you feel that our staff is happy? Do you feel that our staff is motivated towards you? Do you feel that we have your genuine interest at the core of our business? And if the customers there say yes, well, then you can ask them for favors and they will work for you and be loyal as a process. But you don't have to ask them like, would you recommend us to your friends? Because what we have seen is then people go, you can still be in some kind of individualistic mode when you say that. Yeah, I will recommend my friends, but you get kind of disconnected from the operational processes, and you should not propel your customer into that individual high up in the sky ambassadorship state. You don't have to do that. You can take grounded feedback.
Okay.
And so that's what we do. Yeah. So always see to it that in every encounter you have these 3 needs being fulfilled.
So it does sound, in this concept of an encounter, which is very different to the concept of a touch point in journey mapping that people regularly use, because it sounds to me this concept is fundamental and engages more both sides of the customer and how they interact with the firm at that moment around a certain goal or whatever, or need, I should say. Whereas a touch point maybe is more often related to a physical thing, like we deliver a touch point. Have I got that sort of?
That's it. Absolutely.
Yeah. But what is?
Agree with that.
But in that encounter and bringing all those resources to bear, it sounds AI can help, but quite complicated to do. Not just from a training perspective, but also from maybe understanding that customer and linking databases and how you use artificial intelligence. Do you think this is maybe too complicated for customers to start to engage with, or do you see this potential now?
Well, I see it's too complicated for managers to manage.
Okay.
So let there be no doubt, we need artificial intelligence. So there's no need in having tomorrow a scrum at your company and see like how can we make our next touch points like have 3 layers because we heard this guy yesterday who spoke about it and it seems like a good idea. There's no way of getting your arms around that as managers. The allocation of resources to encounters will be done by artificial intelligence. There's no way of managers saying like these are our important customers. That is what AI will decide. After an encounter, it can be that we have a first-time customer who suddenly gets like this excitement and this urge to co-create and to invest in you, like there in his first encounter ever with your company. And then who are you to say like, yeah, but it's a first-time customer, that's not really a loyal customer and so on. No. If that customer on the spot is willing to co-create, participate, be a good citizen, be engaged, co-develop, co-produce, self-service, and so on, if he's willing to do that, you must put resources into that. See, so and the point is you cannot say a priori like, yeah, but that type of customers, no, we only start investing and rewarding customers after they have been with us like 12 times. I mean, who are you? Who are you to say that? So that is really important. I think it's what is interesting is that it will lead to a new type of quality management. And that is like quite fundamental, because if you go into service management or experience management books, it generally says that there is some kind of triangle, and the triangle is always the customer, the employee, or the service system, can be automated or an app, and the company. Now, what the company does is make a promise to the customer. That's what we call brand. And so the brand says, like, you can expect from us this. Basically, the customer has no expectations, but we actually kind of suggest expectations. That's what a brand does. It suggests what you can expect from them. So it only puts pressure on your delivery system. It puts huge pressure on your delivery system. What you then say to your delivery system, where people say, like, we are the best and you're empowered and so on, and we have a great culture for service, and this is what we made the customer promise. So you do all kind of these empowerment and motivation schemes. But then in the encounter itself, you impose standard operating procedures. Because then you say, like, look, the brand need to be consistently, compliant. So because that's what we promised. So, we need to deliver that. So what we see is that for 30 years, we have believed that quality was about, standardize your stuff. And even, if staff is like variable in terms of mood and so on, and in terms of skills, try to give them so many guidelines that whatever the output is some kind of compliant with what we advertised yesterday to the customer. That has been our effort for many, many, many years. And still today, companies believe that the employees represent the brand. Now, that is kind of almost, I think, we are at the end of that. Okay. In an encounter, you represent yourself. In an encounter, everybody represents himself. And what the challenge becomes opposite. It's like if, for instance, like a trainee service staff member is meeting an all-time loyal customer, well, clearly in that encounter, the person with the resources is the customer. The customer has the money, has the knowledge, has the status, has everything, and the employee is there. Is like, okay, well, you're apparently new to the game, girl. See, and the interesting thing is now, what can the brand do to actually bridge and make itself relevant in the interaction? So the only way is not to say to the girl, like, you have to live up to standards, but it's more like, okay, we clearly have a gap here, or we have like, there could be issues in resource integration. And what can the brand do? Well, what the brand can do is inform the employee and say, like, well, you're going to meet a customer, a really loyal customer, and this is like his, historic profile and so on. And if you cannot kind of handle this, then these are the other people in the organization. So actually the brand can kind of inform the girl about what I call transactive memory. Like, where are the other resources in the organization that she can actually appeal to in case something goes wrong? But it can be that the loyal customer is really nice and will not eat her for, what was it, the movie with Anthony Hopkins? I have a student for dinner, or I have someone... customers actually have employees for dinner, in the sense that experienced customers know exactly where to turn to in order to get the company to get things done.
Yes.
And they can actually be a nuisance to a company unless companies go smart into the encounter with them. But the brand so needs to kind of get grounded. So get away from the idea of being a light and a set of symbolic associations like we represent, innovation and respect and whatever. Just come down here to the conversation and try to make yourself useful. And that is, I think, the future. So we need to ground relationships and loyalty, but we also need to ground brands. And brands have always said, like, how are we going to deal with diversity? And they have big issues with that. And actually they shouldn't. I mean, they are strong, but they should just become able to kind of mix and remix the content that they have and make it appropriate to the customer in each encounter. So there is nothing like to be afraid of. They can embrace diversity of staff. They can embrace diversity of customers. It's no longer at the value level that it's being played. I mean, your values, Stephen, are clearly different from mine. But you see, we have now been speaking to each other for a year, and we have bridged it. And actually now we are stronger because we have complementing values, and together we have a bigger value system. So there's this whole idea of matching and stuff, that was like 10 years ago, and it was still like salient, and I think that is over. So we now have the diversity model, and we have an encounter, and let's pull it off.
Okay, so it sounds like the greater emphasis then, to your earlier point, is away from abstract management processes saying what should be done in the abstract, designing experiences for trust or some abstract concept like that is probably not durable. But the durability comes from the interaction and the relationship, and AI is essentially augmenting that encounter process. So more of the power is actually being divested to the encounter, which is making that immediate interface between employee and customer the real nub of developing loyal relationships. Is that a fair analogy?
Absolutely, and if I just like to end it, so where the standardization comes in, because we need standardization and to obtain efficiency in this process, is that we used to standardize what's happening in the encounter, that we used to standardize that, and what we now will standardize is the briefing and the debriefing process of an encounter. And that is really interesting. So what it means is that what we can influence is not so much the encounter. You know, people will go into an encounter with different moods and stuff, and you cannot control for that. The only thing you can do is put a stockade around it and actually say, like, brief everybody, like what you just did before. I mean, we had this different conversation. We had like 2 or 3 minutes just before we started, and that's exactly it. So we can standardize that. So what are your expectations, my expectations, how are we going to do this, and so on, and we go into the encounter. And now after the encounter, once we hang up here, we can also, like, everybody hangs up, this movie is over, and then you will call me again. That's what you always do after a Skype conference. You call your buddy again and say, like, what was your impression of the Skype conference? And you do it immediately afterwards. So you debrief actually the event. And so what happened in the encounter was, like, in the web conference or in the seminar or in the check-in in an hotel or whatever, or the boarding machine in an airplane, you never know what the experience is going to be. But what you can do is debrief it. And it's the debriefing, the attitude and the evaluation that the customer has afterwards that, again, is the input for the next encounter. And and that is exactly, so we need to kind of become a serial briefer and debriefer of encounters. And now one thing is really important, that is the time that you leave between briefing and debriefing. For instance, if you have a mature employee and a mature customer, then you brief them before a stay of 3 days, and after a stay of 3 days in your hotel, for instance, then you debrief them. Now, if you have a new trainee who's going into an encounter with an experienced customer, then you brief them before the check-in and you debrief after the check-in, meaning 90 seconds later. So it means that if you are afraid, when you see that there's like risk, and risk is what quality people hate, then actually you make the time between briefing and debriefing shorter. So it means that at more regular intervals, you take feedback from all the people involved in an encounter to see if they're still, like, on board, if they're not, like, mentally checking out on on what's going on there. And that is, like, interesting. And these are variables that you can kind of play with.
Okay.
And maybe the last one, and that's really nice as well, that is where artificial intelligence is absolutely needed because managers cannot handle that. That has to do with the complexity of relationships. There's really, like, something really fundamental. That is that customers are looking for simple services, products, and concepts like brands. Apple needs to be simple, you know, what does it stand for and how does it work and so on. But relationships that are durable are by definition complex. Relationships are never simple, and therefore emotions are not enough to, it's not enough to have butterflies in your stomach to have a 30-year relationship, because the butterflies will be gone after 6 months. Yeah. And it also means that it's not enough to have rewards, because rewards is just one pillar. So if we say, we're loyalty and rewarded with discounts and benefits and upgrades, that's not enough. It's only 16 or 15% of a successful relationship. Successful relationships are based on identification, closeness, intimacy, involvement, engagement, me doing stuff for you, you doing stuff for me, and so on. So many factors. So we need simple products and services, but we need complex relationships. Now, the interesting thing is that AI can model that. So when you are in love, everything is pink colored, and we just have, like, if you ask people who are in love, like, you ask them 100 questions about the relationship, they will all say 9 out of 10 score or 10 out of 10 score. It's all perfect. When you ask all people who are sitting on a bench after 60 years of marriage, and you ask them, like, what is the success of your relationship, and they will say it's having breakfast together every morning. And you know that it's way more, but they have kind of simplified what their relationship is. But in between, when you have a couple with 4 kids, and they are, like, in their 40s, and they need to make a career, and they need to get the kids to school and so on, then the relationship is extremely complex. You have intersocial dependencies and so on. And that kind of, you have to understand when a customer wants to go into a simple working mode with you, and when they want to go into a more complex working mode with you. And all that can be modeled pretty easily. It's called, like, how many aspects in relationships are salient, but that is unmanageable by, individual managers or service staff and so on. Sure. So you need to have, like, a permanent tracking mechanism for that. And that's AI can do that.
And I guess also because it's also about personalization as well. Each individual is going to have a different state of relationship than other individuals, not in a segment.
No, and pardon me for that. It starts with the feedback. So for me, what we really consider is, like, feedback questions is like content, and content needs to be delivered to the right person, right moment, at the right time, and so on.
Yes.
And in the right way. But it's the same with feedback. So there's about, I think, in a relationship we have found about 200 like relevant feedback questions. But you can, of course, not ask them all at the same time in a survey, because nobody fills that out anymore. But the question then is, like, which customer needs to get which feedback question? at what moment, and asked by whom or through what system, and how are we going to follow up on that with content. So it means that feedback is just a feedback strategy consists of maybe a repository with 300 possible questions. And then the question is like, yeah, but I can ask only one question. The person is checking out, and I can only ask one question. When we will have the pleasure of seeing you again, for instance. But that is like one question taken from a repository, but you need to have the right fit. See, so I think that what we have done so far is that quality people always wanted to have a standardized satisfaction or delight or experience or net promoter, and that therefore net promoter score was so appealing because it's a single measure standardized.
Yes.
We can always apply it and so on. But we should of course not look at the convenience of applying it. We should look at the relevance of
Exactly.
having that information.
Yes.
And we need way more information from the customer, but we need to collect it in a smart, natural way. We can no longer send surveys, whatever. We need to ask questions integrated in the service encounter. So part of the encounter, the 92-second encounter, is afterwards asking the right questions. And that is fully individualized and standardized.
Yes.
De-standardized.
And does this equally apply to digital environment, to a web experience?
Yeah, I want to say that this whole relational thing, sometimes people ask me, like, is it more applicable, this encounter idea is more applicable to like healthcare or education or hospitality than it is to, like say product delivery or like retail store or online environments where everything is more, still like a delivery model. And actually the key characteristics that we should ask for is not like a product or service or digital or online or offline. The key thing is, do we have a smart customer or a dumb customer? Like a dumb customer can still go for a delivery model, like, do it to me. But as soon as the customer can contribute to improved service, and that's what we also believe according to the service dominant logic, is that actually the customer makes something out of his iPhone 6. There's a lot of stupid iPhone 6 users who just use it for their calendar. Why did you pay 600 euros for it or 600 pounds for it for your phone? So what someone makes out of an experience, and that depends on the qualities of the customer. So it's, for me, it's and therefore it's like in a business to business environment. We always ask like, yeah, when I deliver oil to you, it's a tanker, and you say like, yeah, that's in a contractual business-to-business environment. I deliver you a ship full of oil, and you say like, yeah, that's a delivery model. There is no service there, and so on. Yeah, but that's basically not the question. The question is whether the one who is receiving the oil could have actually helped with his expertise to create a better planning, to help in optimizing the order size, in helping to, in determining the composition of exactly like the products that are being delivered. As soon as the customer has the potential to make the transaction more rich, then you are forced to go into an encounter with them. And that is like unimportant whether it's online, offline, product, service, B2C or B2B. That's irrespective of that.
So just finally, my side, this notion of encounter, we've spoken about encounter and touchpoint, and encounter versus experience. It sounds to me, in summary, that whether rightly or wrongly, the concept of creating an experience has been turned into something that the firm delivers to you, to wow you, to have an emotional pull, or to maybe in some senses find a deeper need, but has almost become degraded now. And now we need to look more at the relationship side, not so much deliver an experience, but how can we build a relationship so we understand you better within the encounter. Is that a reasonable summary of the difference between what's happened in experience and where we should go to with encounters?
Yes, but we must give credit to the experience strand of thinking for a number of things. Indeed, when you think that you can create experiences, you're dead. So when you can deliver something because the customer is part of the delivery. So, in a way, is creating experiences and service dominant logic in a way are paradoxal. You cannot create or pre-design anything before you actually ask me about how we're going to do it. Yeah. And that actually Pine and Gilmore maybe did not have really in mind. But where the experiential thinking is really, really, really good is not so much the emphasis on the emotional aspects, because there's a lot of cognitive experiences as well. Like you can have like a really good cognitive experience and think like, this was really good. What experience is really good is as a method of phenomenological. And when we always say like, we have to look at things like holistically. Yes. And that is really true, because indeed what is true is that the consumer takes everything and sees how it kind of comes to him. And their experience was, because what was the real revolution in experience economy was that it actually said goodbye to the serve qual, like the serve
Yes.
quality model. And what it means is that the customer before was put in some kind of judge seat position. Like, if you have to take an exam of the company, how would you rate us on friendliness? How would you rate us on responsiveness? How would you rate us on that? And that is how we measured impact on the customer. But basically, that is a model that, the customer is not really a judge who is like, not everybody is a teacher, and I'm a teacher, but not everybody is a teacher. What we just have is, no, this is how it comes to me, how I experience it. So the experience as a methodology to capture how people have made sense out of something, and that can be cognitive, or how they felt while being serviced or while using a product, that is fantastic.
Yes.
So I more grounded. So experience is more grounded than actually, asking the customer to evaluate on critical performance dimensions like we used to do. Like, these are the key performance dimensions. And so there, I fully still believe in experience as being a way of asking feedback from customers. Like, would you describe the relationship that, Stephen, like the relationship that we have, Stephen, would you describe it as one in which we are close? Would you describe this, what we have, as a close relationship? What I mean then is I ask you after your experience of the relationship. So you see, and so
Yes.
experience is good as a method, but it's not good as an engineered concept or something, or as something that you're going to build and then deliver it to the customer, because anything that is delivered will never make customers durably loyal.
Cool. Okay, Olaf. Well, I very much appreciate your time. If people want to, and we will have a chat just after this webinar's finished. I'll keep it running. Could you just let people know if they're interested in all these topics, the encounter, the importance of artificial intelligence, all the things that you've spoken about, which is absolutely fascinating and I think very thought-leading, how they can get in touch with you?
First, my need to get to know you and them and listeners is even, at least as high as maybe their need to get to know me. See, so I'm not, let's say, all-knowing in this, and I'm very curious to know who actually was able to sit out here the 40 minutes video, because that is like a big effort. And,
yeah, of course.
So thank you for that. But no, you can just contact me on my email. Probably is easiest. It's Olaf Hermans, OLAF HERMANS, Olaf Hermans @gmail.com, or through my LinkedIn profile. You will definitely find me through NHTV Breda University. I will be thrilled to continue this discussion.
Okay. Well, Olaf, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for offering the opportunity to be with you, Stephen. Thanks so much.
Thank you.